Good afternoon. My name is Nina Gage, here with
Laura DePietro,
as well as Mike Middleman. We will be presenting a webinar on the Clean Water Initiative Program grants for the fiscal year 2018. If you have any issues with hearing or seeing, please type into the comment box. Ryan Patch is also here monitoring our comments. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them into the comment box. We may address some of them today, but responses to all questions will be posted online next week. Questions can be submitted to agr.waterquality@vermont.gov until Friday, December 8th. I will show you that email address again, don't worry. So for a quick overview of this webinar presentation, we're going to go over the request for proposals, the agency's priority outcomes for this grant funding, the eligible activity areas, the timeline for the grant, what you will need to include in your proposal, as well as the ranking criteria that will be used to evaluate proposals. And then we will have some time for questions at the end. The link at the bottom of the screen will take you to our webpage, which is where all of the information regarding this grant is located. If you go to our webpage, up on the upper right-hand corner, there's a tab for grants. And if you click that tab, it'll take you to this page where you can click Water Quality Grant Opportunities. And that is where you will find all of the pertinent resources. So within the request for proposals, the first page provides a bigger picture information regarding the grant program, how it is funded, and the role of partner organizations in agricultural water quality initiatives. Act 64, the Clean Water Act, makes this grant program possible. Act 64 reads, "The Clean Water Fund shall be used to provide funding to nonprofit organizations, regional associations, and other entities for implementation and administration of community-based water quality programs or projects." This grant funding is augmented with further funding for agricultural water quality project implementation, mainly through the agency's Best Management Practice Program, or BMP program. So the second paragraph of the request for proposals is important because it outlines the intent of this grant program. The goal is to reduce the administrative oversight required for the proposal and application process, as well as the required work for reporting on separate grants when organizations are doing similar activities. So how does that work? Applicants can choose to apply for either 2- or 4-year grant agreements. If you apply for a 2-year grant proposal, there will be possibility for amendment depending on performance review and grant progress after that 2-year period. So the agency has outlined 2 overarching outcomes that are prioritized for this grant funding. Proposals should show program long-term plans to address these impacts. The first one being agricultural non-point source pollution reduction and regulatory compliance. So this outlines the fact that we must work towards not only regulatory compliance of farms with the required ag practices, or RAPs, but also towards TMDL agricultural reductions and the general improvement of soil health. The second priority outcome is economic and environmental viability. Viable farms are in a better position to make necessary or desired improvements, such as the implementation of conservation practices. So applicants should frame their proposal around these long-term outcomes. So some questions to consider as an applicant. What does your organization do to address these outcomes? What activities can be funded through this grant? How will you evaluate your performance or grant progress? And how does your activity engagement lead to the priority outcomes as outlined by the agency? Now we'll take a look at some of the examples of eligible activities. If you were an applicant or a recipient of the Clean Water Initiative Program grants for fiscal year 2017, then you're probably familiar with two of the eligible activities, one being organizational development and the second, education and outreach. So this year what's different is that education and outreach will apply to trainings, seminars, and educational events. Organizational development grants, you must be a nonprofit to apply for this activity. There are further descriptions of these activities within the RFP. And now for fiscal year 2018, what is different or new? Some things to keep in mind. So outreach material development may include developing and designing needed outreach materials. So you want to make sure you identify the need for those materials if that is something you are proposing. Technical assistance was previously something part of education and outreach. Now it is its own discrete activity. This is working with farms as a service coordinator, providing assistance to farms for program enrollment and more. Remember, there are further descriptions of these activities within the RFP. Project planning, design, and implementation is an activity category that is aimed at implementation, making on-farm improvements, conservation practice implementation, and all of the logistics it takes to get to that point. Additionally, research and market development is an eligible activity. This might include development of markets for phosphorus export out of the watershed, research that aims to help in meeting priority outcomes, for instance, edge of field monitoring, non-point source pollution reduction activities, and more. New to this round of Clean Water Initiative grants is the Farm Compliance Assessment. The information collected through this assessment is protected in statute by 6 VSA Chapter 3, Section 61. There's a link to that statute there. The purpose is to assess the farm's compliance with the RAPs. Information from this survey assessment will be used to prioritize funding and policy decisions. It can be released to the public in aggregate, but not in any way that would identify the farm or farmer. The information collected through this survey platform cannot be used for enforcement action or inspection priority. Inspection priority for CSFOs, or certified small farms, is driven by location in impaired watersheds. The last eligible activity is other. If there is an activity or project plan that is not covered, feel free to apply. The option for innovation is open. If you have an idea and are unsure whether it would be applicable, please feel free to ask. Now for the timeline on this grant program. The RFP opened on November 17th, 2017. Today is December 4th. We are having a webinar session. You can submit questions until the end of the week or December 8th. Proposals should be submitted by the end of the day on January 10th. And we anticipate to notify folks no later than February 10th whether their proposal was accepted or not. Now, for what your proposal will contain, there are 3 major parts, one being the proposal itself. There is a template provided online and includes very clear directions. we advise that you use the template provided. The second part of the proposal will be a logic model of your proposal. This is included within the proposal template as well as a separate attachment that you can download. The third part is a budget spreadsheet that you will be required to attach as an Excel document to your proposal. The proposal is online, so I'm not going to go through all of that, but I will go into a little more detail as far as the logic model. This is available online as well. A logic model is a graphical representation of cause and effect. It's a method of illustrating how your actions will lead to a desired result. There are 6 major parts. Your inputs. Oops. Sorry about that. So this is the project investments, your staffing, the funding that you're requesting, and the materials that will go into your program activities. The grantee activities highlights what the organization does. So you as an applicant will highlight what you plan to do in your program work. You might provide a number of technical assistance visits or perhaps a number of educational events that you plan to hold. The grantee outputs are the tangible accomplishments that come as a result of the activities. So it might be, excuse me. So this is going to provide quantity and quality measurements of your outputs. Please don't assume a specific percentage of success, but rather detail the performance measurements that you will use to evaluate your activity engagement. The short-term outcomes similarly are measurement. This is the effects on learning. The medium term will be effects on actions. And the last column is going to be the agency's priority outcomes. So you will define which one or both of the priority outcomes your program plans to address. On the bottom of this slide, there's a couple links for additional information. These links are also included in the proposal template. Within your proposal, you'll have to outline each activity you plan to engage in. And for that activity, which types of measurements will you be evaluating? So those in bold are going to be concrete across all grant recipients. So I've given an example from organizational development. So no matter what type of organizational development you apply for, you will be required to track and report on the things highlighted in bold. The aspects in italics are agency guidance. This measurement should be proposed by the applicant, as well as a method of collecting this information, whether it be through a survey or through a focus group. In addition, applicants can absolutely propose additional measurements for evaluation. Included online is a tracking spreadsheet. Please use this as a reference as to the measurements that you are required to report and track. The budget spreadsheet is the third part of your proposal. So we've got the proposal, logic model, and your budget spreadsheet. So this must be included in your proposal as an Excel attachment. If you are applying for a 4-year grant agreement, then you will detail required funds for year 1, year 2, year 3, and 4. If you wish to apply for just a 2-year agreement, you can just detail information for year 1 and year 2. There are a bunch of different sections depending on what the funding is for in relation to your project. Once you edit these, it will compute to a summary tab for personnel, and then it will adjust your overall requested numbers. In your proposal, you will take the summary information for each section and include it in a summary budget. So the first column is the requested funds from your budget spreadsheet. The second column is any matching funds to come to a total project budget. Now, just a few pieces of advice when developing your proposal. Be sure to read the entire RFP before beginning your proposal. Follow the directions in the proposal template. You can start by designing your program logic model. You can use it as a guide and a tool in your program development in deciding which activities you propose to engage in. Think about how you can collaborate with other organizations. Be sure to provide detailed project plans within activity engagement. Please answer the required questions. Use the budget spreadsheet as a tool for planning your program work. Considering that there is the opportunity for 4-year grants, please be sure to take the time and include everything you might need in your budget spreadsheet, because if granted a specific dollar amount for 4 years, that is how much you will be granted. Also, review the ranking criteria before submitting your proposal, because that is what your proposal will be evaluated on. Additionally, geographic area comprises 10% of the ranking criteria, so decide on where you will deploy your grant work. Location is important. You can use tactical basin plans and TMDLs to identify where you should focus your outreach. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike Middleman, who's going to go over the ranking criteria for this grant. Mike, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Nina. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Yes, so first of all is what we were looking at whether or not proposals are complete. That is, you have submitted all of the required elements requested in the RFP. As far as the actual ranking of the proposals, the first section is geographical area, which is worth 10% of the overall ranking. And this really gets at the map that Nina just showed you. The percentage of your project that will be targeting either the targeted priority areas, the general priority areas, or outside of those areas. If your entire project, as an example, is within one of the targeted priority areas, you will receive full points for this category. And depending on how much of your project focuses in those areas versus the general areas, you'll be awarded some points based on how targeted your project is. I do want to say that I had meant to include 3 other smaller watersheds in the Missisquoi Bay area, Berry Brook, Godin Brook, and Sampsonville Brook, to the map, and we will be releasing a revised map soon, but I thought I'd let you all know that those will be added. They're relatively small drainages to the Missisquoi River. The next area, and this along with impact, make up the majority of how proposal will be ranked, is cost. This is relatively straightforward. More expensive projects will receive fewer points in this category. And this balances out with impact, which is also worth the same amount of points. Also with costs wrapped up into that is overall clarity of the budget. Have you included all the budget components requested? Is it clear and do the numbers add up? And so for example, if you have a very small project, you might rank very high for cost because it should be low cost, but its impact might be lower than some other projects. So this segues into the impact section, which is worth the same amount of points. And this is really, we're looking at, how strong of a case have you made for your program? What is the expected impact? How well does your activities flow into the outcome you've identified? How well do your outcomes align with our priorities that we set forth? And just we're really looking for how well put together your proposal is and what is the expected impact over time, both in terms of water quality or social impact to the agricultural community. And so we're really looking at how smart are your proposals? Are they specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, or timely? Next section is worth 10% of the overall ranking, which is past performance and capacity, which if you've never had a grant with us before or contract, we're really looking at counting on you guys to demonstrate your past performance on similar sort of projects in the past and the credentials of your staff. If you have held a grant or agreement with us in the past, we will consider directly your reports and the outcomes from previous work in this section as well. And then program evaluation methods, we're really looking at how well you're able to show the ability and capability to adequately evaluate the success of your program, both in aligning how successfully tracked with your activities. And as Nina was saying, you can addressing the intent of all the different tracking methods that we put forth in the RFP, but you are welcome to propose your own as well. We want to show that not only do you are proposing a strong program, but you also have in mind how you will show program success. And that's it. And I'm also, if you guys have any specific questions on these criteria, happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mike. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the comment box. Additionally, questions can be submitted until the end of the week by 4 p.m. on Friday, December 8th to agr.waterquality@vermont.gov. My email as well as Mike's is also listed on the RFP if you would like to direct questions directly to us. Once again, everything that we've discussed today is posted online at this link. We will also be posting the recorded webinar online on this same page.
Hi, this is Laura. So the first question is from Jeff. Can you explain the compliance survey further? Will it be required on farms? It depends on, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking for, but if you choose to go to farms and do a whole farm kind of RAP assessment, we ask that anyone doing that type of full farm review uses a tool that our staff have developed, which is called a SurveyMonkey. Really use some high-tech stuff, but it works really well to gather all the different variables that you need to go look at on a farm and gather that data, because what we would like to compile as a state is a survey of all the assessments of farms and where they're at any point in time. And so that data is not able to be released individually for the public, but in aggregate we certainly can. And if you got a chance to see, we did at one point release some of the information from the North Lake Farm Survey, for instance. That's where we use the SurveyMonkey tool to look at kind of the status of where everything is in the North Lake. If you're going to do a soup to nuts review of a farm for RAPs, that's the tool and pathway we would train you on and ask you to use. If you're going to do something more specific, like a specific plan to fix something on a farm, that is not what the survey tool and protection is for. That information would need to be submitted to the agency, and should there be a public records request, it would be released if someone specifically asked for that. So our goal, so a question was, will there be a new RFP out in future years? And our goal here is, you know, Vermont's pretty small. There's a lot of the partners that are the same partners. And for all of our sake, if every year we ask everyone to put a submission in, it really doesn't allow people to have continuity for bigger program planning. And it also gets us into a situation where you may have 5 grants over the course of a couple of years where you're doing individual reporting on each one of those grants to the agency, and administratively the deadlines, timelines might all be different. So to streamline that, we're looking to go bigger picture and give people some ability to do some bigger picture programmatic work and keep it under one grant with the agency so that there can be less administrative oversight on both of our parts. With that said, our intent is you know, we have funding now, but each year we know we will get funding, and we hope at least for, you know, the 10 years that the clean water funding is available. So we're going to try and commit as much as we can for the projects that meet the ranking criteria to achieve at least year 1 so that people can get moving, and then as we get funding for the following year, we would allocate whatever necessary to those projects we've already made commitments on. How much available funding is left at this point, I won't know until we see the applicants get through the ranking and understand. I mean, we have a sense of what our budget is going forward at some point, but you know, certainly making the commitment for these grants will allow us to say we need X amount of dollars at minimum every year to support the grants that we've made commitments to, and then whatever additional funds we're able to allocate towards ag water quality. So I can't guarantee it, but certainly would love to, but it may also be more targeted. So one of the things the agency did this year was we did a livestock pasturing and removal from stream project. We did grass waterway projects. So more specific, where the agency is asking people to do a certain task. So if there's a smaller pot of money left, the agency may decide how to direct that money in a specific RFP versus this big open programmatic type of RFP.
Mark, to address your question, says, did I hear it said that 2-year projects may be eligible for renewal for an additional 2? The answer to your question is yes, grants can be amended for an additional period of time. They can also be amended for scope of work and other things.
Yeah, so long as when you know, we understand you're going to set up a 4-year program. You might have some changes, right? Technologies, other things might come into play that you want to do something that makes a little more sense. As long as the intent of what you're proposing does not skew your ranking criteria significantly and your costs, you know, your impact, those kind of things that are part of that ranking criteria, then we can consider it. And that's what we'll look at when if and when you ask for a modification to a future amendment. whether it's skewed enough. So if you think about it, a lot of us work with NRCS, right? If your modification is substantial, then you're going to get knocked out of your ranking criteria, which is why they would not change your contract, right? So that kind of concept of stay true to what you originally proposed is certainly the best, but minor modifications are okay.
Are there any additional questions? All right, thank you all for participating. If you have any further questions, please email the email address on this slide, agr.waterquality@vermont.gov by the end of the week. All responses to all questions will be responded to and posted on our website at this link, as well as this recorded webinar.
So keep in mind, if you have specifics about your grant that you don't want to share with others in your questions, try and keep them general, because we are going to share everyone's questions with everyone.
Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.